life can hit like a sledgehammer. But guess what? We hit back harder. Welcome to Affirm That Shit. Somehow, I thrive. I'm Jennifer Rogers, your no BS guide to turning life's toughest moments into badass victories. Ready to flip the script? Let's affirm that life can be a bitch, but somehow we thrive. Welcome to today's episode of Affirm That Shit. My question for you right out of the box today: how many of you are people pleasers? Have been a people pleaser? Are still a people pleaser? You're walking through everyday life trying to make sure everything is just right, just perfect. Every box is checked, every I is dotted, every T is crossed. We've all been there. Whether it was in childhood, motherhood, fatherhood, adulthood, or let's be honest, the shithood. We've tried to be something for someone else instead of being ourselves. Today, you're going to meet Cindy Edington, and she is going to blow you away with her transformation. She took charge of her challenges of perfectionism, of heartache, of people-pleasing, and owned her shit. Today, she transforms and empowers others, and she leads you through some of your toughest, darkest, and stickiest shit situations to become the powerhouse behind self-love, self-healing, and self-growth. But before we meet Cindy, we're going to lead in like we do each week with our affirmations. I'm going to ask you to join me in repeating these 3 times. If you're in a space where you cannot do this right now, come back to this episode. Come back as many times as you need. Say them as many times as you need. Because today, it's about living for you and your authentic self. So when you're ready, I want you to find a space of peace and calm. We're going to take a deep breath in and begin with our affirmations. Take that deep breath now. And release. And we're going to begin with, I release unrealistic standards and welcome peace in my journey. I release unrealistic standards and welcome peace in my journey. I release unrealistic standards and welcome peace in my journey. I let go of self-judgment and embrace self-compassion. I let go of self-judgment and embrace self-compassion. I let go of self-judgment and embrace self-compassion. I attract love that is healthy, fulfilling, and uplifting. I attract love that is healthy, fulfilling, and uplifting. I attract love that is healthy, fulfilling, and uplifting. Deep breath in and let it out. After this short break, we're going to welcome Cindy and show you how you can attract love, self-compassion, and peace. We'll be right back.
Imagine a space where you let go, where the clamor of the world quiets and you meet your truest self. At Yukio, through sound vibrations, Reiki, and the wisdom of tarot, we help you release what no longer serves you, align with your energy, and renew your spirit. Begin your journey back to yourself today.
Hello, Cindy.
Jennifer,
How are you doing today?
I am fantastic. I am so happy to be here with you. And I was listening to those affirmations and just filled my heart with so much joy.
Thank you. And thank you for allowing me to prepare those for you. I know that your story you're going to share with us today has many layers of shit. Many layers. And if this is the first time you're listening to this podcast, just remember that shit means somehow I thrived. And Cindy, if I was to put a picture next to someone who has thrived through a shit storm of life, you would be at the top of that pyramid, my friend.
Yeah. Don't we all go through some shit?
Girl, yes. Yes. So I don't want to tease our listeners or our viewers if they're watching much longer because when you shared part of your story with me, I was like, wait. I don't want to hear it all. I want to be surprised as well. Because what I found in listening to you was healing of myself in the moment. And your years of practice from where you've been to where you are today, I'm sure that many others are going to feel that as well. So what I'd like you to do is just start wherever you would like in your shit story and walk us through getting clean and coming out on the other side, my friend.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so where to start? Where to begin? Well, for me, the big shit storm that happened, I call it actually, it was a heartbreaking event, but truly it was a heart-opening event. But I didn't see it at the time, right? When we're in the shit, we don't really see it. So for me, it was actually going through a very heartbreaking divorce. This was a few decades ago at this point. Um, it completely blindsided me. I had no idea it was even coming. I basically woke up to my ex kicking me in bed saying, get out, and he didn't want to be married anymore. Um, the difficult part was that we had been trying to conceive for about a year. And so I went home. I just was so blindsided. I was like so emotional. Of course, I got out. I went home to my parents, and the first thing my father said to me is like, "What did you do?" And I was like, "Whoa," like it just completely threw me back. And I was like, "What do you mean? What did I do?" And needless to say, I found out while I was there at my parents' for the weekend um, that I was pregnant. My mom took one look at me and she goes, "Are you feeling all right?" I'm like, "I've been sick on and off for the past few months." She's like, She goes, "We're going to the drugstore right now." And of course, one peed stick later, it was like, yeah, and so, I mean, I just literally at that point fell apart because I didn't even know how I was going to go back to my house and tell my ex that, guess what, I'm pregnant. And so it was very heartbreaking. Went back. He was going to take responsibility, told him I was pregnant, then told him basically to get out. Um,
May I ask how long you were married during this
we
time?
were together almost 9 years. We were married just about 5. Yeah, 5 years. We actually had celebrated our 5-year anniversary. That came after our daughter was born. But yeah, at that time we were together, oh gosh, 4 years married. So together maybe 8. So, we'd gotten past the 7-year itch point. I thought
Right.
I was in pretty good shape. But I wasn't. And so it was just, again, one of those things that was just like so devastating, because it's like, not only did he didn't want to be married anymore, but now here I am pregnant with, a child. We got back together when I was about 8 months pregnant. He basically begged me, give him another chance. And I was like, okay, hey, everybody's entitled to one faux pas, right?
Sure.
I actually went to a therapist. I said, okay, let's get back together, but on one condition, because I was so hormonal at the time too, being, 8 months pregnant. I was like, only if we go back to counseling, if we go to counseling, not go back, but actually start counseling.
Start.
So we went to this counselor, and okay, so this is even add to it. The first thing, it's a woman. Um, Nothing against women, right? I love women. Different culture, and she said, it's not uncommon. In fact, it's quite normal for a man to have an affair when the decision's been made to start a family. Again, I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about?
So again, that compounding feeling of, Cindy, what did you do?
Yeah,
Why would your husband want to have an affair if you were doing what you were supposed to be doing, right?
right. Yeah. So this is quite normal when we, are going to have a family. So my ex was like, it gave him kind of like the get out of jail free card. It was like, well, I don't need to go back. And like, this is quite normal. This is what guys do. And I'm
Nothing
left
wrong
with
with me here.
nothing wrong with me. Right. And I'm like left with this big bag of emotions again. So, needless to say, my daughter was born, and about 3 months after she was born, I could see the same pattern starting to repeat. And I found out from he was in a band, one of the bandmates' girlfriends basically said, I think he's seeing somebody. And again, on our 5th anniversary, this is when I found, yep, he was seeing somebody else. So, with that, it was like the final straw for me. It was like, hey, no. And we parted ways. Now, I don't hold anything against him at all, or the woman that he actually left me for, which is now my daughter's stepmom. I get along with everybody. So I went through all of that. I hold nothing against anybody. Um, but what's interesting is that I think it's what my dad said to me. What did you do? That really opened up this underlying living belief that said to me that the only way that I was going to be lovable is if I was perfect. And I didn't even realize that consciously for a long time. And so I, when my ex and I split, like, you could literally eat off of my kitchen floor. I went into uber perfectionism. It was like that was the only way I was going to be able to be loved, right? So, I mean, anything and everything that you could think about, appearance, you name it. I'm going to be perfect because that's the only way that I'm going to be loved.
When
And
you heard that, did you really look at yourself under a microscope and say, well, maybe I did do something wrong? What is it about me? And do you think that's what triggered these behaviors you're talking about? The extreme cleanliness, the extreme appearance, everything's right. Did you
yeah,
hold yourself under that microscope that
oh, big time,
had no right to be on you?
big time. I mean, I was doing the shoulds. I
Mhm.
sat in a big, huge pile of should. I should have been prettier. I should have been smarter. I should have been a better wife. I should have been a better mom. I should all over the place. And that just kept feeding the perfectionism too. And so I got into the trap of do more, be more, do more, be more, do more, be more. And so it's this whole of, striving yet never arriving. And I think that is such a big trap that you can fall into. And I know that's exactly what I fell into. It's like do more, be more. And then so you take that another step, right? And you think that it's, oh, I'm just a high achiever, right? I'm just trying to be my best self. Wrong. There is a component of that, but until you start to do the deep inner work, and this is where, for me, this has been a very long, arduous journey to get to where I am right now, which is I love myself. Are there still threads of perfectionism? I don't think we'll ever kind of like fully get rid of them. It will rear its head occasionally, and then I have to do a check in on myself and go, what's that really about? And if it's really true to me, then okay, yes. If it's not, and when I say it's not, am I doing it to serve somebody else? Am I
Mm.
doing it because I want somebody else to like love me, like me? And so when I started to do some really deep, deep inner work, uh, I realized that I had this huge driving need to be liked.
Yes.
And it was taking away my personal power and it was driving all of my decisions. Again, so unconscious at the time. And for me, the big opening for me to actually do the inner work was yoga. So this is years after, my ex and I had split. I'd actually met my now husband. And a colleague of mine, and I was holding him. I got to tell you this too. My husband now is probably the most wonderful man on the planet. I love him with all of my being, all of my heart, because I held him like this, like at an arm's length distance for so long because I didn't trust, right? And
Absolutely.
so again, the do more, be more, do more, be more, and he kept saying, it's okay. Like you can be exactly who you need to be. So I could be my like ugly self. I call it my ugly self, meaning that I could like break down, cry, whatever. And he would just hold me in his arms and say, it's okay. So, whatever, however I showed up was still okay. Where before I just didn't feel like I could do that. So again, fast forward, a colleague of mine invited me to his yoga class. And I'm like, part of my whole thing with the body image was, I worked out in the gym. So let me back up a little bit. So part of what I did to actually, so I was actually left with a lot of debt too, from my ex. And so one of the ways that I figured that I could like make a little bit of extra money and relieve some of the stress, plus they had a little mini daycare, was the gym that I worked out at. And so I leveraged my passion for that into a certification. So I actually started off as a fitness instructor doing group fitness. And so again, that fed the perfectionism, right? The do more, be more. Um, and so where am I going? And so my colleague says to me, I want you to come and take my yoga class. Okay. So I sit in his yoga class, and it was a Kundalini class, and we literally just sat in an easy seated, and we chanted, and we sang a song, and at the end of the class, we ate an apple, and it wasn't really physical. So here I am, this like powerhouse in kickboxing, spin instructor, our athletic conditioning, all the things that you need to do right to look good, feel good. I go into this really calm space. And I'm like, this wasn't really, that active. But I walked out of there and I literally felt like I was walking on air. And something hit me deep, deep inside. And I was like, the biggest aha. And that's when I had this huge recognition that all of my validation was coming from external sources. And so again, all this perfectionism, it all just kept hitting me. This underlying hidden limiting belief of I had to be perfect in order, to be loved was like this huge, huge mind blowing aha for me. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, this was my first entree. It was like the hook. And I was like being reeled in. It was like, I needed more yoga. I needed more yoga.
I've heard an aha moment is this exactly when the emotional attacks that physical and it breaks it down. And it sounds like this is exactly what happened to you. You were able to calm that rapid racing mind and just let that peace hit the physical part of Cindy at the deepest cellular level.
So, so true. I had never felt so much peace within inside of myself up until that moment. Because again, I was in the do more, be more, do more, be more, do more, be more. I was like literally in this trap of the hamster wheel, trying to do more and be more. And so that was a huge, huge breakthrough moment for me. Continuing on, I got into life coaching that also brought so much. So again, I was at a point in my career where they were actually closing down the place that I worked at. And so, I could either move to New York City,
Mhm.
which was like a plane away, and I didn't want to take my daughter away from her father. So I gave up that opportunity because I really wanted her to still have this opportunity to like be around her dad, grow up, with her dad somewhat in her life. And so I negated that and took another job, stayed here. And this is where coaching came into place because there was an opportunity to do something different. And so I thought, well, I'm going to take this coaching course and see what happens from that. Again, more aha moments came out of that. However, I had a huge scarcity mentality because I still was kind of like on my own, single mom, even though I had a guy in my life, we weren't married. It was like my child is my responsibility. And I just felt like I couldn't jump into that full time. Okay. Continue to fast forward. Yoga continued to be thriving in my life, teaching yoga classes, etc. It got to a point too where yoga was just becoming yet another gym class. And I knew it was deeper than that for me. And I wanted to help people that couldn't go to the normal kind of classes, even the beginner classes at that point. Again, we're talking 25 years ago, was still just way too much for somebody who had physical challenges. And so I wanted to get certified as a yoga therapist, which took my training much, much deeper, a lot more training. So the reason why I'm saying this is that while I was there was an instructor who did a whole session on yoga for grief relief. And I don't know what he did or what he said. I can't even remember. But all I know is he opened again another big, huge, cracked my heart, pierced it. And I collapsed on the floor and I started bawling and shaking. And I had no idea what was going on. Talk about what a way to clear the room. Like there's like 50 other women in the room that are like, he came
Ouch. I
over,
didn't sign up for that.
right? They're like, I don't know what's going to happen with her, but something's going on. And again, so he came over and sat by me, and I'm like, okay, I don't even know what's going on. So come to find out, he was a somatic psychotherapist as well. And so I ended up working with him for 4 years and found out, again, deep inner work, deep inner work, a lot of counseling, plus yoga concept, and doing a lot of different types of somatic exercises to help me kind of like break through even more. And again, I just came to realize that I was in complex grief, that didn't even know who I was anymore. And so it was a lot of work to kind of like build myself back up. And part of it was, he said to me, Cindy, you have to sit in your sadness. And I'm like, what do you mean I have to sit in my sadness? Because I had been trained again. So this is where I learned so much about early messaging and how whatever our parents, grandparents, or our culture, our community, our society, industry, all the messages that are handed down to you that you literally take in when you're little that affect you. And so there was more ahas that came out in terms of how much messaging had come down again from my family. There was so many messages, and again, this is not to blame or shame my dad or anybody else, but he had a lot of very negative messages to say about women, and especially weight. If a woman, somebody was heavy, I mean, he just said these god awful things about. And so all of these again messages that I would take in, um, weren't allowed to cry. It would be one of these, you'd hear messages like, what are you crying about? I'll give you something to cry about. So you would like close down and not take all of those feelings inside. And so I learned at a very early age to kind of like tuck those feelings,
Just
right?
stuff it away.
Stuff it,
Just,
stuff it.
mhm.
Because again, vulnerability, I was taught that vulnerability was weakness, and that you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right? And we don't cry. I mean, you do what you got to do. And so again, part of that whole do more, be more is, again, all of these messages started flooding in of like how this fed the perfectionism. And so, putting your nose to the grindstone and doing more and being more, that's very, again, there's a lot of talk now. I'm learning even more and more about masculine versus feminine energy. I mean, I was thrust into complete masculine energy and stayed in that for a very, very, very long time. And again, it just fed more of the perfectionism. And so it takes, again, this is stuff that takes, I'm going to say, a while to like work through. And it's like an onion in a way, right? You have to peel back all of these layers and continue to go very deep and continue to work and see like, where is this all coming from? Where is this all stemming from? And a lot of it was really just very early messaging that was programmed in to say, this is what you need to do. This is who you need to be. Now, plus,
I love the analogy you just used as the onion and what you're talking about. We've all heard that analogy or that metaphor before. But when you're talking about the work that you've done, think about that layer of the onion. That's a thin layer, right? We peel that, it sheds off from time to time, and then you go in to cut it, and maybe it's really ripe. And here comes those tears. So here's your tears that day that you're in somatic yoga and grief work. Where is this coming from? I don't know. And then, you start peeling that onion layer back. Sometimes we get that slimy, what is this? I don't want this anymore, but I've still got to cut through this. So I think your analogy of an onion right here is perfect, because what happens when you break that onion down and you start cooking it, per se? It becomes translucent. It can become sweet. It adds flavor to our life. And that is a beautiful piece that you've just built in there. We can put any other analogy there, but talking about the grief work, talking about the perfectionism, it's ugly. It stinks. We can grow an appendage over here if we don't let go, because we know just what you're sharing with us. When we hear those messages, the body stores it.
yeah,
We go through a traumatic event, the body stores it. And we don't know where, when, why, or how it's going to come up, but it's going to circle back through eventually.
absolutely. Absolutely. I love what you said too, that, as you start to cook it, it gets sweeter because again, that's exactly how I felt. As I'm peeling, I'm like, it's getting stinky and I'm starting to cry here. And then one of the things that the counselor said is, Cindy, you have to sit in your sadness. And so that took time, because when you're not used to feeling feelings, to be able to do that, again, that took a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of energy to focus in on that and to say, you know what, I can feel that. It's okay to feel that. And I'm just going to honor it and validate that. And so that to me again was a huge big breakthrough. And like I said, it just brought up, the more work you do, the more you see of, where do some of these things come through, and what were the things that were driving it, those messages. There was a lot of, again, when I was growing up, we moved a lot, so I went through a lot of bullying, because I was always the new kid. And so that too added on to it, that whole, I call myself the chameleon. Like I could fit into like any crowd. So you kind of like lose little pieces of yourself when that all happens as well. And that high need to be liked. Again, that it check in to see, do you have this high need to be liked? Because that also drove the perfectionism, right? If I can be somebody else, then I'm liked, then I can fit in, then I can belong. And so that took a long time too, to just realize that when you start to do, again, I went through this very intensive coaching program. It was 2.5 years long, and we did a lot of work on needs and values. And that was, we had to try on some different needs and then do a big huge like presentation on it, believe it or not. And that one was huge, because I was like, ooh, do I have that need, the need to be liked? Because like, who doesn't want to be liked, right? I mean, when you think about it, it's like, who doesn't want to be liked? Of course we all want to be liked. But when you start to look at it, if it's an Uber drive and it's driving all of your decisions, and what I noticed is that anytime I got into a position where I was I had a male authoritative guy above me, I would give away all of my power in order to be liked, in order to be fit in. And then I started to take a look at how many times did I give away my personal power in order to be liked. And again, then this comes down to how women were treated in industry, in terms of, we are supposedly the taskers, we do all the little tasks, and the guys are supposed to be the strategic thinkers and leaders. And there's still a lot of that happens. I mean, again, I'm in my 60s now. So, I mean, we're rolling along. We're getting there, right? We're getting there, slow but sure, but, I look back, 20 years ago, and that still was like the big message. And so, again, it's just, there's so much. All I can say is inner work is so pivotal to understand your behaviors, because it all comes down to is what are my patterns of behavior? What are my limiting beliefs and how are they surfacing and how is that affecting me? And so again, more of the onion got unpeeled, when I saw that this was like such a high need. And then I had to really, really work on that to say, okay, am I doing this just because that's a need that I have to like want to be liked? I need to be liked? Or am I okay if somebody doesn't like me? Is it okay that they can do their own thing? And even if they don't like me, am I going to fall apart in the corner? Or am I going to be like, oh my God, I need to do and be more? And
And
so
maybe
that
that's what you need to do, is to fall apart in the corner and to rebuild that self
again,
and complete that journey. And you have, how long has your journey been, Cindy, when you really started owning your shit? Because you've said it, this takes a while. So people that are listening, people that are watching, this was not something that happened in a 2-year coaching session, in 2 yoga sessions. This has been a transformation. So if you were to look back, what would be a number of years that you could say that you've been working on that fulfilling love, that self compassion, and that release of needing to be liked?
I would have to say probably close to 30 years. And I don't say that to discourage anybody. If you're like, oh my God, it took her 30 years, but you're right. It is a journey of waking up. And when you are so unconscious to it and you're just on autopilot, right? You're gonna be doing things based again on whatever messages were handed down. And that's a lot of the work that I do right now with my clients is like, what are the messages that have been handing down to you? Like, let's kind of like dig underneath a little bit more of like what's really happening here. And it really comes down to like what are the patterns of behavior and what's getting in your way, et cetera. But I would say, yeah, for me, it's been a good like 30-year journey. Again, I just put my head down when I single mom for a good many years. I mean, I didn't really get together with my now husband until my daughter was like 5 years old. So 5 years on my own of like grinding and then still holding him at an arm's length distance because I didn't trust, right? I had big, huge trust issues. Um, is he really going to love me for me?
Is he
You
going to
know,
cheat on me?
is he going
What does your 5? What does your 9 look like? What am I pretty enough? So all of those things probably resurfacing. And that's why I think it's important to reiterate that when we think that we've completed the journey,
to?
it's okay to get knocked down in that shit again. But it's not okay to sit in it, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Sit in the sadness, but get up and go.
uh-oh. Did we lose it for a moment? Yeah, I think it is get up and go. It's, do I still have moments? Absolutely, I still have moments. For me, it's the awareness is key. First and foremost is awareness because so many of us are so unconscious for so much for so long, and we actually need these heart breaking, heart opening shit story storms to happen for us to actually be able to bloom, right? This is the way we grow, right? There has to be some kind of struggle. I mean, look at the butterfly, right? It struggles to get out of the cocoon, and if it comes out too soon, it's not going to be fully developed, right? So you really have to go through the full struggle. You got to go through it all to get to the other side. And then, yeah, life is beautiful and life is life. It's this, right? If it was this, it would be boring. So we're going to have this. It's going to keep coming back, right? We're still going to have scenarios that are going to pop back. It may be an apple the first time, an orange the next, and a banana the next time. It's all fruit, but it's the theme is the same, right?
Right.
It's all the same. The different fruits, but the theme is the same. And so it's just realizing, oh, here it is again. What do I want to do with it? So to me, it's awareness first. As soon as you can start to be really aware of what's really happening, what are your limiting beliefs, you see them, you see the patterns of behavior that like coincide with that. Now you can take action. Once you have awareness, then you can choose. You're not on autopilot anymore. You can choose, what do I want to do next? Right? Because when you have choice, you have power in that. And that doesn't
Yes.
mean you have to do anything. You can choose that, you know what, I see that and I'm choosing not to do anything today. No, I'm going to do nothing today. That's a choice. That's an actual decision and a choice to actually do nothing. So again, that to me is where the personal power comes in. That I'm not just being driven by my needs, that Uber needs. I'm not being driven by all the programming that's been handed down generationally, culturally, societally, from industry. This is how you're supposed to behave, Cindy. The guy above, blah, blah, blah. You know, if you have a good idea, because I mean, I remember times when I had really great ideas in corporate. Wasn't heard until the man said the exact same thing. Now all of a sudden it was the greatest idea since sliced bread. And again, I'm not trying to bash men here. I'm just saying this is the way it is. It's facts. This is what women have had to deal with for a many a moon, you know?
Yes.
So, I mean, it's really kind of interesting. So again, I think that once you see it, the awareness, the action, then you can, take it from there, right?
And that's exactly what one of the first affirmations was. What are those unrealistic standards? And I
Mm-hmm.
choose peace in the journey. Cindy, your story is absolutely amazing. You've given us several nuggets to take away with today and just sharing and taking that pause. If there's anyone listening or watching that wants to reach out to you, I invite you now to share your contact information, but we'll also share it in the show notes. So, would you like to share how those could reach out if they're interested in connecting with you?
Oh, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Yeah, if anybody wants to talk more, you can reach me so I'm actually the owner of Tranquil Heart Wellness. And so you can reach me at Tranquil Heart Wellness, all one word.com. Again, you can contact me. That's the best way to get to me is just go to my website. That'll give you a little bit more information of the services that I provide, but also it's a great way to connect with me. So that would be the best way.
Beautiful. I want to thank you again for sharing your shit story with us today, letting us learn and grow. And somehow I thrived, and I know others are going to thrive through your story. So, once again, thank you for being a guest with us here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You just took another step towards owning your story and thriving against all odds. This is Affirm That Shit. Somehow I thrived. If you're ready to keep kicking ass, subscribe now and let's keep breaking barriers together. Remember, life's a battle, but somehow you'll thrive.